Will millennials ever be able to retire, especially considering there's rising food costs or just inflation in general? You've got student loan payments. How can you ever really retire? Now, you might be behind on saving for retirement, but there's still hope. And here are 3 ways you can actually go about doing that. All right, so number 1, and I know you hear this all the time, but spend wisely. And I know that could be hard for some of you, of course, because you might say, hey, I'm gonna spend whatever I want. You know what? To some level, I agree with you. Because I think if you're gonna spend money, spend on things you actually want. However, what happens if you spend everything that you're making, right? If you're just paycheck to paycheck, it's gonna be pretty hard for you to be able to have anything to actually save for retirement. By the way, let's just talk about retirement here. I know many of you don't wanna quote unquote retire. You just wanna be work optional, don't you? You want to be able to be at the point where you can work because you want to, not because you have to. You set your own terms. You can work your own hours. You can work from wherever you want. You could be living the travel, nomadic lifestyle, but still you want the freedom to be able to do what you want. And so that's what I'm talking about here. You don't have to go in this old age of retirement. But the first thing for you to do that is you've got to be able to spend your money wisely. Make sure you have extra money that you can hold on to. And that really leads to the second thing too, is that you need to have an emergency fund, right? An emergency fund is so important because, let's be honest, life happens. We never know what's going to happen to us at any point of our lives, right? That's why it's called an emergency, because emergencies do happen. Accidents happen, the unexpected, and sometimes it's a good unexpected. It could be you meet the man or the woman of your dreams and you're now ready to get married and you got another expense coming up. So you need to save for emergencies. You need to have that money that's at least, I would say, 6 to 12 months of your monthly expenses. And this comes back to number 1. If you need to spend wisely, remember, spending wisely, if you can get those expenses down to a reasonable point. Again, you don't have to live on rice and beans and do all that kind of crap you hear people talk about, especially those that are baby boomers telling you to live cheap and to just sacrifice your life away. But still, get it to a reasonable amount so that you can save up that emergency fund faster, just in case there's layoffs, just in case there are emergencies that do come up in your life. And that really leads to the third thing, is invest for passive income. Here's the number 1 mistake I see that millennials make, is that millennials often, and this is true with Gen Xers, baby boomers even, is that the go-to is, I gotta load up my 401k. And so everybody tells you, hey, you can be FIRE, right? Financially independent, retire early. They tell you that kind of crap. And they'll say, hey, you can live on 4%, but that's not true if you wanna retire early. That 4% rule applies to those that are at least in their 60s. So, if you want to be able to retire earlier, that rule becomes not 4%, but more like 2%. That's if you're trying to save money in your 401ks, which, by the way, is not the right vehicle to retire early. Why? Because 401k says you can't touch that money until you're 59 and a half. Otherwise, they slap you with a 10% penalty and then they give you taxes. So you don't want to be in that place. It's the wrong vehicle to get you there. If you want to go to the Caribbean, you do not take a car to the Caribbean, right? You take a boat or a plane at least, or something else that gets you to the right place. You need the right vehicle. And so the right vehicle for creating passive income is not your 401k or your IRAs. Put that out of your mind. You cannot retire early with those things. They're designed for you to retire later. So if you want to retire early, get your money in cash. Now you can use things we talk about in this channel. There's other videos we can focus on, like infinite banking and things like that, where you can store your money, earn more than 0.nothing% at the bank, and still be able to invest it and essentially make money in 2 places at once. But that money, once you build up in savings, then needs to go out and start investing for passive income. That's not in the stock market. The stock market, although it can create a little bit of income, it's pretty dismal. To put it bluntly, right? It just doesn't pay a lot. And no, putting that money in Nvidia, right? Or putting that money in Meta or whatever it might be, that's not the key. Putting into stocks, those things can go up, but they can also crash just as fast. And so that is not the way to wealth. And again, it never solves the problem of income. Yes, it grows in value, but it never actually kicks off anything that you need month to month, year after year. And so that's where I lean more towards things like real estate investing. Real estate investing is not only backed by real assets, it doesn't just go up or down depending on however Elon Musk feels like when he tweets, right? It's not based on that. It's based on something that's a real asset that people have a real need. People need to live somewhere. They need housing. And it's not always housing that could be in real estate. And there's a lot of other options out there too. But let me tell you, the best way is in real estate. Now, it's not guaranteed, but man, the income that can come off that, plus the fact that it's pretty much likely to never go to zero, is a pretty awesome deal. For example, I had $32,000 that I put as a down payment on a rental property out in Memphis, Tennessee. This was just 6 years ago. Now, That $32,000 was the down payment. I got a mortgage for the rest. So the bank is putting a lot of the risk on the line for themselves. Now the cash flow coming in this property started out over $300 a month. It eventually kept increasing year after year as rents would go up. And eventually now that cash flow is $650 a month. It's now about $7,500 a year is what I'm getting paid on this property from $32,000. If you do the math, guys, that's almost like getting over a 20% rate of return on my money. But that's not all, right? Because the cool thing is it's also appreciated in that period of time. And at the same time, not just because of appreciation, but also the renters, because they pay me rent that covers my mortgage payment, also pays down my mortgage balance for me. So what happens is that the mortgage balance goes down, my equity goes up, and guess what? I've made over a 300% return in the last 6 years on that property. If I had thrown that money into the stock market and the S&P 500, I would have made about 55 to 60%, which isn't bad, but that's not even close to the 300% I made in real estate. So if you want to retire early, it's not just about throwing your money in the market. It's about how can I grow my money and have passive income. And that's the key, guys, right there. By the way, I could sell this property right now and actually double that income again. So remember, that $32,000, I might have made $1,700 a year pulling that money off from the stock market. If I'm trying to pull out, that's even if I pull out 3%. It'd be less if I pull out 2%. It'd be more like $1,200, $1,300 a year, $100 a month I can take from that 32 grand. But instead, guys, I'm being paid over $650 a month on that money. That is real money coming in month after month, year after year. And I've got equity that if I sold it, I could also get another big chunk of cash to then invest it again. That is the difference. That is why you want to invest for passive income, something that doesn't require to wait till you're 60 years old or later if the government changes their mind, but something that gives you income today. Now I mentioned there's better places to save than your 401k. If you want to figure out how to get your investments to pay you twice, check out this next video here.